This is Dream Power Radio, the place where your dreams turn into reality. Here is your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Hello, 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 and welcome to Dream Power Radio on the amazing Women and Men of Power Network, the world's leading positive programming network, powered by Raven International. I'm your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman, the Dream Coach. This is a show where we talk about dreams, both daytime and nighttime dreams, and how you can use them to make the internal shift to a life you love. Energy. We've talked about it before, and perhaps we'll talk about it again because we can't talk about it enough. Energy is all around us. We are energy. We can choose to ignore it, to pretend it's no big deal, but we'd be doing ourselves a big disservice because we can use energy to heal ourselves and to make other major improvements in our lives. One way we can do this is with the practice of Reiki, and we're going to talk about this with my guest, Vicky Roncero. Vicky is a master Reiki teacher who helps her clients control stress and anxiety, heal from injury, and maintain wellness. She's written healing meditations for Deepak Chopra, and she's recently launched a new company, Here to Heal. I want to hear all about that. Maybe we'll talk about that later. But in the meantime, Vicky, welcome to Dream Power Radio.
Wow, thanks so much, Debbie. That was such a nice introduction.
Oh, it's my pleasure to have you here, Vicky. And Vicky, it seems that it's amazing that something we can't see or hear or touch can have such an impact on us. So can you explain just how Reiki works?
Absolutely. A lot of people ask me, what is Reiki? And Reiki, by definition, is two Japanese words. Rei means light and Ki means energy. But what your Reiki actually is, your light energy, is your connection to your soul, your life force. And it's the same energy that moves through nature. So if you look at the clouds in the sky, the waves in the ocean, the sunset that's setting, all of those things have that same life force energy. And the more that you connect with your own light and the more that you connect with nature, you start to see that those same cycles of energy that run through the seasons and run through nature are inside of all of us. But they have a tendency to get stuck. That energy can get stuck by feelings and emotions that are trapped in our chakras. We all have a chakra system. And when our energies and emotions get stuck within those chakras, then we don't flow as optimally. And that can affect our physical and mental health. So keeping your energy aligned is really crucial to overall wellness.
You also say that Reiki is also like telling a story.
Yes.
So can you explain what you mean by that?
Sure. Well, as you know, you and I was amazed to find out, went to the same college and we both studied communications. And it's interesting to kind of study communications. And at college, you're studying interpersonal, nonverbal, broadcasting, all these different ways of communicating. But really, from a time I was very young, I was very sensitive to people's energies. And to me, that's a great communicator. Like when someone walks into a room and you can tell right away if you like them or not before they even say a word. You have sort of like a feeling or a vibe about the person. And as I got older and studied communications and then later energy, I was able to find the vocabulary to really understand that is our frequency, that our frequency does broadcast a language about ourselves. And when you work as a Reiki master and you learn to tap into people's frequency and you're able to see like, oh, there might be something stuck here in this heart chakra energy. And there's also something stuck a little lower in the solar plexus, which is your confidence. You're able to piece together a story, like what has happened that's wounded your heart and shaken your confidence. Let's talk about this. Let's move through this. Because what's wonderful about your energy is that just like the different days and the different seasons, it's different every single day. You don't have to feel the victim of these experiences. You can just acknowledge them and work through them and turn the page and create the next chapter of your life. So after spending over 25 years in my career as a writer producer, I really wanted to show people that they are also writer producers of their lives and that our life is a story unfolding. So when we're able to kind of connect with our energy and put the pieces together, we can use Reiki as the ultimate storytelling tool.
So when you're working with a client, do you actually speak to them and get them to tell you the story?
It's up to what they want to share. Like I might say something like, I'm feeling a block in your heart chakra energy. It feels like your heart energy is now guarded. So we're going to try to open that up. And then I'll spend time in their heart chakra energy trying to open that up and release that feeling of that like caged heart. And then the person might say, oh, yes, that resonates. That makes a lot of sense. I just went through a breakup. And they start sharing what they're comfortable sharing. So it's not crucial. It doesn't have to be this like verbal exchange because you really are feeling what's going on. And just by telling them what you're feeling, they're able to share as much or as little as they'd like to.
Right. And so you just said in this example, you were talking about, opening up energy in the heart chakra. When you do a Reiki session, do you work on all the chakras or just one?
Well, when the person comes in and they lay down, you scan the chakras and you see which ones have blocks and might need more attention. So you really listen to the person's body, unless there could be someone who comes in and says, I'm here for a chakra balancing. A lot of people come in for that because that's just a way to just maintain that optimal flow. I also do a lot of sessions via distance healing, which is really phenomenal. It's actually my favorite way of working with Reiki. And when someone's not physically in front of you and you're not physically scanning the chakras, you're doing it energetically through the frequency and the vibrations. And it's kind of like you're instantly scanning them regardless of if that's what they asked for or not, because you're just getting a radar as to where you need to bring your attention. And that's the way it works most effectively.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about the distant healing, because I find that fascinating that you don't have to actually be in the same place. So when you do distant Reiki, how does that work?
Well, it's really amazing. I totally agree with you. When you learn Reiki 1, you're learning self-care Reiki and how to do Reiki on yourself and your family. Then when you move on to Reiki 2, they get into distance healing. And when I first heard about it, I was like, oh, come on. How can I possibly be here in New Jersey and someone else is in California and I'm doing Reiki on them? I was very skeptical. So the teacher actually put us like 3 floors apart in the place where we were studying and had you do the Reiki and then had your partner come back down. And it was amazing to hear. I was starting on the hips and then moving to the stomach and then the head. And my partner said, you started on my hips, then you went to my stomach and then my head. And I was like, wow, like it's really amazing. And it does feel magical. But what you're really doing is you're synchronizing your intention and your time and their intention and their time. So when you set up that kind of date, if you will, if I say, okay, Debbie, at 8 p.m. tonight, I'm sending you Reiki energy. It's just like we made this appointment for this interview right now. And when you're connecting, the same way that you're connecting through the phone, through the frequencies or the Zoom or however you're communicating, you're doing the same thing through the person's energy. And it really is something you have to try to experience, because a lot of people are, oh, I get that, I want to do it, and right away they're in. Other people, like a lot of my clients who were in-person clients and couldn't come in because of COVID, they said, oh, I'm very skeptical. I don't know if I want distance healing. And they waited a few weeks. They wanted to see what would happen in the world. And then eventually they were like, okay, I want to try a distance healing. And now they're saying, I got to be honest with you, I don't want to come back in, because to be able to get Reiki in my own bed, in my own pajamas, I'm really loving this distance healing. So it really is up to the comfort level and the openness of each person. But once they try, I think they're hooked.
But it does speak to the fact that we are all energetic beings, and it's a matter of just tapping into the energy that is there.
Yeah, exactly. And it's amazing how, like, we don't question when you can do a Zoom or you can do a Skype, or, we don't question that we could be in a conference room and press a button and someone from Australia could be in the room with us. But yet when it's our energy, we're like, wait a minute. So I love to think that like I'd like to trust my body and other people's energy bodies more than the technology. So there's an intelligence there that's really, really profound. And when you tap into it, it's pretty amazing.
Oh, it sure is. So tell me, when you do a session, typically how long does a session last?
A distance healing is usually about an hour. And a big chunk of that is setting the intention. So, for example, I just did one this morning and we spent about 15 minutes on the intention. It's very, very important that you're really zooming in on exactly what you want from that session. Because if you just say, oh, I just want some Reiki, then it's kind of like going into a restaurant and saying, I'm hungry and I want some food. Like you'll get it and you might feel satisfied. But if you go in and you specifically say, I would like to have a hamburger and French fries and a shake, you're going to leave feeling like you've got exactly what you wanted. And the intentions are the way of starting the energy, because every thought, every word has energy and is energy. And the more that builds, the more closer you are to manifesting that intention.
Mm. And once somebody undergoes a Reiki session, how long do the effects last?
Well, it's kind of like if you imagine throwing a pebble into a pond and seeing it ripple out. Once we set the intention, we then moved into the transmission. So if I set your intention and I said, okay, now I'd like you to lay down, I'm going to do the transmission. Though that's about 15 minutes and it's really, really intense. And it takes a very, very deep level of concentration and meditation to really hone in on their energy and send the energy. But the energy doesn't just last 15 minutes. Some people feel it rippling through the rest of the day. They feel shifts within themselves, or they might finish the session and say, I didn't really feel much. And then an hour later text me and say, whoa, I feel so much better now. So it's really about that energy vibration kind of rippling out and expanding and vibrating throughout the rest of the day. So the effects could last like pretty much the whole rest of the day.
So what does the client feel like when actually undergoing the session?
Well, what I've heard is varying different things depending on their intention and depending on their need. So, for example, there was someone this morning who was having really bad vertigo, and we worked on that and worked on clearing that. And when we were finished, she felt a lot less dizzy. There can be somebody who's feeling depressed and anxious with all these months of isolation. And it's really helpful with anxiety and stress and any feelings of anxious, like kind of fight or flight activation. Like when we can kind of calm down our central nervous system and the amygdala in our brain and kind of get the person's energy really calm, they feel a whole lot better instantly. So it really depends on what their issue was, but definitely people feel very relaxed. They feel a lot less alone, and they feel, if they're looking for energy, they might leave the session feeling more energized, less like depressed and blue. So the energy kind of finds you and moves what you need.
But it is important that the person have a very clear intention of what they want going in.
Yes, the clearer the intention, the more they're going to feel. And also, a lot of people find it interesting that for a distance healing session, I don't speak to the person. It's all done through texting. Because once we introduce the vibration of our voice and the way that your own voice sort of vibrates in your head, it kind of knocks you out of that meditative state where you're connecting with their frequency. So a lot of people are like, oh, I didn't realize it was through texting. And then they kind of like that because there's a certain like anonymous feeling and a certain secret feeling, like you don't feel like you have to actually say something, but you might feel comfortable texting it. And then people open up and really get clear with their intention and feel really good when the session's over.
Well, I have so many more questions to ask you about this, but it's time for a break. Okay. We are speaking about Reiki with Vicky Roncero, and we'll be right back.
When is a car not a car? When it shows up in your dreams. Cars are one of the most common dream symbols. If you don't know why you're dreaming about cars or any image, it can leave you confused or scared. But that dream could be a solution to a pressing problem, or an insight into a solution that's been bugging you for years. Go to my website and sign up for a complimentary discovery session, and I'll help you understand why a dream is a terrible thing to waste. Go to thedreamcoach.net for more information.
Welcome back to Dream Power Radio with your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Yes, welcome back to Dream Power Radio. I'm your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman, and we're speaking all about Reiki with my guest, Vicky Roncero. Vicky, I'm just wondering, we talked about some of the benefits that people can get out of Reiki. Can you give me an example of somebody who really benefited from this?
Absolutely. Reiki is really great with moving through very heavy emotions. So if you've gone through grief and you think that maybe you've grieved and you're good, but you're doing a Reiki session and you pick up on these lower vibrations, grief, sadness, all of those anger, rage, all of those emotions have very lower vibrations, and happiness, joy, they have higher vibrations. So there was one client who came in and you can sometimes come in thinking that you have one thing, but discover something very different. She thought that she had just been laid off from a job and she needed to come in and get the confidence boost and the energy that she needed to feel ready to tackle looking for a new job. And when she came in, I felt a much heavier, dense energy moving through her, and it was around her heart chakra and around her confidence. And I just said, I'm feeling an energy that really usually feels to me like grief. So I know you're talking about job loss and you want to focus on that, but is there someone you lost recently that you probably haven't processed your grief? And she just kind of really got very emotional and released a lot of that and shared with me that her dad had died 2 years prior. And she was so wrapped up in her job that she never really took the proper time to work through that. And that's an example of the way we live our lives. We're always going. And no matter what happens, we think we got it. We push it down, we deal with it, and we keep moving forward. But it's going to creep up if it doesn't get cleared and you didn't take the time to properly work through those feelings. They're going to creep up and they can affect you physically or mentally. And she started to come regularly and had the Reiki sessions to really move through the grief. And when she did, she also was able to feel more confident and ready to get that new job. So it might have been a different way of getting there, but it kind of worked through what was needed to get her out the other side of that. So Reiki is sometimes about having the courage to open a closet that you've been keeping shut. There's always that closet in your house that you shove everything in. And when you have guests, you're like, oh, don't open that one. And Reiki's kind of like saying, hey, wait, until we open this one and clean it out and clear it, we really don't have a clean space. So let's clear this and make room for something. And Reiki's about clearing out that energy that's no longer serving you and making space for new and exciting opportunities to come in.
And that's a wonderful way of putting it. But it also speaks to how much all of us hold in.
Yeah.
And don't let go. And without even realizing it, because we're just going through our lives and we don't really think about it too much until it gets to that point where it becomes debilitating or, hits us in a way where, oh my God, I got to deal with this somehow. And
exactly. Yeah.
Right. And this is such a useful process to be able to let go.
Yeah.
And release all of that negative.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's wonderful. I'm just wondering, because we've all been dealing with this pandemic for the past months going on, and have you found more people coming to you for stress relief or just having getting rid of the effects of whatever they're feeling from this?
Yes, absolutely. There's people who I never worked with before who are reaching out for, hey, I heard about this. This might help. Can you do a session? And they enjoy it very much because, again, it's we also live in a culture that people aren't always so willing to say, hey, I'm feeling stressed and I need help, and everybody's stressed. This was the great equalizer. If there's one person out there who's not feeling stressed from the last several months, I don't know. But I think that to just be honest and authentic about what you're feeling and realize that vulnerability is shared by all of us, and then kind of connect with someone who can help you work through it, it's really empowering. It really just kind of connects you in a way that makes you feel very like almost freed from this heaviness of it. And I am seeing that more and more people who didn't know even what Reiki was, they're opening to the idea of it, they're giving it a try, and they're connecting in ways that are really helping them.
That's wonderful. I'm just wondering, what's the difference between Reiki and other kinds of energy healing methods like Qigong, for example?
Well, from what I know, I'm not that versed in that energy healing modality, but Reiki was developed in Japan by a Japanese Buddhist monk who decided that he wanted to give people a way of connecting with their light to empower them on their own journey of self-discovery. So he wasn't necessarily looking for healing from an illness or an injury. He was trying to look for a way to kind of make you go deeper into something and move forward in your path to healing. And I know that I have a neighbor who does Qigong, and she's always outside doing like positions, and I'm fascinated by it because I know she's moving energy, and it has to do with a lot of different poses and things like that. And I know that similarly, they call Qi in Chinese the same as Qi, like Reiki is the key part is the energy. And we are all working with life force energy, but just in different ways.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. How did you get involved in Reiki?
Well, I always felt a sensitivity to energy that I really didn't understand. Like I mentioned before, even when I was little, it kind of scared me. Like I would sense things that, I would just kind of be quiet about. But when I was 10 years old, I was actually on the bus coming home from school, and I heard a very clear message that said, Opa died. And I was like, Opa died. Opa was my lovable grandpa from Germany that I just adored, and he was perfectly healthy. And as the bus came closer to my house, I knew it was real, and I just felt it through my whole energy. And I got off the bus, walked up to the house, and my mom opened the door, and just by the look on her face, I knew it was real. And I just said to her, I know, Opa died. And she was just kind of stunned, but she just hugged me, and we never really even talked about that. But I just felt like that moment taught me something really much greater than myself. I knew that there was an energy that somehow was telling me that somehow I was picking up on something. And I never really forgot that. So moving through life and going on to college and studying communications, I became a writer-producer. I loved my career. But one day I was laid off from a job that I really loved, and it was completely unexpected. It was just a big company reorganization. And I found myself needing to just kind of escape and go to a spa for a few days because I was very connected to my job. I loved my job, and I felt like I was Vicky from Nickelodeon. I was setting up shoots and going all over the country doing exciting things. And suddenly I wasn't in 1 minute. So I went to the spa, and I was convinced to try a Reiki session by the receptionist there. And this was now like 19 years ago. And I was like, what the heck is Reiki? And she said, oh, it's this gentle touch. And I kind of rolled my eyes because I really wanted a big, deep tissue massage. But anyway, I tried the Reiki, and I really was cracked wide open. Like, to me, it was so profound, and it sounds so cliche, but it really just made me realize that, like, wow, we are connected to something so much bigger, and I am so much more than my job. And I left there feeling like it doesn't even matter that I lost this job. I can be many things in life. And it was just a real energetic shift that I needed. And the practitioner looked at me and she said, you just connected so deeply with Reiki. You're going to someday be a Reiki master and do this for many people. And I kind of, rolled my eyes and thought, I got to get back to my next TV job. But it was always this little voice in my head that was like, she's right. You want to do this. And I just started to study more and more, and then knew that it was ultimately what I really wanted to do because it felt very familiar. It felt like she tapped into something that I already had a knowledge of. And I really believe that sometimes we can kind of excavate something that we're meant to do. And for me, that was it.
Was it hard for you to go from television to energy?
Not really. I started to do both. Like when I became freelance, when I decided that I wanted to really study Reiki, I kind of was doing freelance projects and Reiki up until about like a year and a half ago. And then I started to only take on projects that are somehow related to health and wellness. And that's been kind of a nice transition. And I still once in a while do some projects like the Deepak Chopra project that you mentioned was just a couple months ago. I like to kind of keep my feet in both worlds because I really want to try to infuse the production and the TV world with the Reiki to help many people become aware of Reiki and the benefits, because it's such a simple tool we all have inside of us. And not many people really even know what it is. And learning to kind of tap into this can really be life-changing. And I want to share that with as many as I can.
Yeah, I tell you, I understand that totally because I feel the same way about dreams. It's a wonderful tool that's within us. Just like Reiki is, and just we have to learn how to use it, and that makes our bodies are so wonderful like that. There's so much we can do for ourselves when we know how to do it. Also at the top of the show, I mentioned that you have just started a new company called Here to Heal. I have that right? Is that name right? So tell me about that. What's it about?
Well, I'm so excited. That's been a project that kind of is marrying both of the worlds, because I reached out to a friend of mine, Jim Stauffer, who's an amazing music composer and audio genius. And we created many tracks together over the years for Nickelodeon, NBC, Lifetime Television, tons of clients. And I reached out to him and had him do a couple of tracks for me a couple of years ago for some workshops I was doing, meditation workshops. And the tracks he did were phenomenal. They were like better than anything I had been working with. So I started to study with him different frequencies and vibrations through sound that work with the different chakras to help move energy through them. And so together with the Reiki, if you're, for example, working on someone's heart chakra energy and you introduce the sound frequency of 528 hertz, that's actually the sound vibration of love. And when you introduce that frequency with the Reiki, the results are even more powerful. So we created these meditations using sound frequencies and music and my voice, and they've really been phenomenal. And then we started doing custom meditations for people that are specifically mapped to their intention and the frequencies that they need to work through their goals. And it's really been great. So I'm excited. We just launched last week.
Wow. I find that fascinating. So the sound frequencies actually correlate to different emotions.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love hearing about stuff like that.
Yeah.
On that note, we are almost just about out of time. I can't believe this has gone by so fast. So my final question to you, Vicky, is how can people find out more about you and your work? Well,
you can follow me on Instagram at Roncero Reiki, or my website is ronceroreiki.com. And anybody who finds me through your show, Debbie, I'd love to offer them 20% off a distance healing to try during this crazy COVID time. I'd love to offer anyone that experience. And I also have a free Reiki class that I teach on Facebook every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And it's at Roncero Reiki on Facebook. It's a little quick 15-minute Reiki class called Reiki Right Now.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
Thanks.
Well, Vicky, thank you so much for being on Dream Power Radio today.
Thanks for having me.
We've been speaking with Vicky Roncero about Reiki. I hope you've enjoyed today's program. Until next time, this is Debbie Spector-Weissman saying, sweet dreams, everybody.
You've been listening to Dream Power Radio with your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman. For more information on Debbie or to sign up for her newsletter, go to dreampowerradio.com. This has been Dream Power Radio on the amazing Women and Men of Power Network, the world's leading positive programming network, powered by Raven International.